So I'm sure talented people like Robert will share your point of view in the U.S. government as well.
Donald, as a private sector person on this panel, let me ask you something. Jesse referred to himself as a passive investor. You know, if we look at the Merrill Lynch situation, Merrill Lynch was negotiating with one private equity firm for recap money, TPG. TPG wants to nominate a board member. They're looking for a much higher return than a sovereign wealth fund like Jesse's. Is it a good or a bad thing that the sovereign wealth funds advertise themselves as passive investors? Is there an opportunity cost there?
For Richard?
For Richard.
Also in the private sector at this time.
Now in the private sector.
Yeah.
Well, I think
we're talking corporate governance.
Yes.
Here.
No. I think it's evolving. I think that it's an inevitable issue that will be resolved in the next several years. But it does appear that out of the gate that the sovereign wealth funds are seeing both an appropriate investment opportunity with what's going on in global capital markets, as well as a way to sort of demonstrate their recognition of this. I won't mention with whom, but I was with a policymaker in Europe in December, around the time that a lot of these deals were being announced, and he was actually commenting on just that point, that in America we had gone from this situation of almost paranoia about sovereign wealth funds to gratitude for coming to the rescue at the time. So I think they will turn out to be good investments and well timed. But I do think down the road, whether or not we're talking several years or longer, there will inevitably this will have to be resolved, because they will not continue to remain passive investors, I think.
Robert.
Yeah, I'd just like to jump in on that point, but before I do, Jesse mentioned the interview that Managing Director Gao did on 60 Minutes on April 6th. And the statement that Managing Director Gao made during that interview, that the CIC would be as open and transparent as Norway, I think was a very important and warmly welcomed statement. On corporate governance, there are voices in this debate that say that sovereign wealth funds shouldn't be allowed to vote their shares. The Treasury view on this is that if sovereign wealth funds of their own accord come to the view that they choose not to vote their shares because it gets them into political or commercial issues that they'd rather stay away from, then that's fine with us. If, on the other hand, sovereign wealth funds take the view that the exercise of voting rights is instrumental to the creation of value in the firm over the medium term, then that's also fine with us. But when you look around at, say, Norway, which is a sovereign wealth fund that does exercise its voting rights, or, as a matter of fact, CalPERS, which is a large, as you know, large state pension fund here in California, which exercises its voting rights, two things stand out. The first is that they both lay out in advance the broad policies that guide their votes. So there shouldn't be any big surprises from the standpoint of individual firms. And the second thing that both do is that they are transparent about how they actually voted, so that outside observers can assess whether their votes were in accord with their stated policies.
So there are a couple of
Jesse,
things.
sorry, did you want to add something?
No, go ahead.
Jesse, if you found that Morgan Stanley was not showing improved results, other shareholders launch dissident movements, at what point do you abandon your passive stance, and how do you express your displeasure?
Well, I think that that is a kind of a question. I think there is a dilemmas. On one hand, as what you mentioned, the corporate governance, assume that the shareholders should be active to kind of a check and balance with the senior management's performance or something like that. On the other hand, I think, whether my view is right or wrong, I think it's the sovereign fund, the issue becomes politicized. Therefore, it's very sensitive for a particular, sovereign fund to be active on this corporate governance side. You see what I mean? Therefore, well, what we feel, I mean, people may have a different feelings. From our perspective, we feel that we have encountered lots of resistance for us to investment. Even we try to express very clearly that is the kind of a purely commercial investment. There's still kind of a resistance. Therefore, at this time, we thought that if you try to be active on the corporate governance side, it might be even more troublesome. So that's kind of a reality we're going to cope with.
There is a schizophrenia that I see in this whole debate, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, on the other hand, I'm not sure that if we talk purely about corporate governance, I think that so far all the sovereign funds are small investors in terms of, well, maybe sometimes even the single largest, but overall the percentage-wise is still much more minority. Therefore, I think that corporate governance is a kind of a mechanism issue. The regulator can function a lot to let most of the shareholders to work on that. Even, like we hold 5%, or even up to 9.9%. It's still, it's not the driving force of a corporate governance issue in the whole company.
So Robert, when Gao Shiqing said in 60 Minutes that he wouldn't want it to be put into a disadvantage when he's disclosing what he's going to buy, what he's not going, or what he's going to sell, in a way of sort of framing the best in class code of conduct. So any comment on that? What you can do to help him to alleviate that concern? That's number one. Number two, on the Dubai ports transaction, that when CFIUS cleared that transaction, and later on in the media and in the poll and everything else, and it kind of a political storm went up, and so they sort of like withdrew that particular application as a result of that. How could other SWFs, looking at this particular environment, is saying that the uncertainty is pretty significant even after you follow the rules? What do you do to alleviate those concerns and create more certainty for the SWFs around the world?
Those are both excellent questions.